Welcome back to We Want Picks. I am RTMMA and I cannot wait to start talking about PFL 2023 regular season, and I also cannot wait for this week of MMA. We've got UFC 287 coming up and it's going to be a crazy one, but on top of that, on Friday night we do have PFL as well, and this is the tournament of the featherweights and also the heavyweights, the women's featherweights and men's heavyweights. I will be more exact. It should be a pretty good one, but before I get into my predictions, I will talk about the We Want Picks premium membership service. You hear Angelo and Jacob talk about it all the time. It's a great service. You get so much value for $10 a month that before you can do that, if you've been a little bit curious about what's kind of going on, you can get a 3-day free trial using my code ARTEM. And you're going to get access for 3 days before, if you choose to not continue, of all of the bets, the UFC 287 bets. The We Want Picks team are incredible at nailing down those UFC pay-per-view events, so definitely you do want to get involved in that, and it should be a great week of fights. I cannot wait to start talking about it, so let's start talking about the picks right now. First fight of the night is going to be Marina Mokhnatkina taking on Yoko Higashi, and I do have the massive favourite, which is Marina Mokhnatkina in the matchup. It is going to be a pretty interesting fight though, because Marina Mokhnatkina has a fantastic background in combat sambo. In fact, a multiple-time gold medalist in the World Championships, multiple-time world champion, European champion, Russian champion as well, and she's actually somewhat recent as well, because she was a world champion in 2018, and now she's kind of made her full transition to MMA. She's had some success in PFL. She did fall short against Kayla Harrison, but that kind of does happen, and she did win against Abby Montez last year, and then she fought for RCC, which is actually a really good and great promotion in Russia, and there's a lot of great fighters in that promotion. Yoko Higashi, she's from Japan, and she does have a wrestling base. It seems she does go for a lot of takedowns. She does have a boxing style. She does throw leg kicks every now and then, but if she is going to fight on the feet, it mostly is going to be with the boxing, and then she will work for wrestling. She will go for double leg takedowns, and she does get them up against the cage. She can get them up in the middle of the octagon as well, like she did against her best opponent yet, in my opinion, Renan, who was the champion of Deep, and she fought her, and then she fought her again in the rematch and beat her in the rematch as well. She then fought a girl with not the best record in the world. She was 0-1, but she finished her, and now she's taking on Marina. I did see someone say in like the Reddit comment sections that Yoko Higashi has a sumo wrestling background, but I could not find any information backing that up whatsoever. But I guess so. Maybe she does have a bit of wrestling behind her, and she does go for a lot of takedowns in her fights. But I do have Marina Mokhnatkina here. On the feet, it should be pretty competitive, but Marina probably would be the better striker, and even then, Marina Mokhnatkina can go for her own takedowns if she wants to. She could also probably reverse the positions that Yoko was in. She actually has fought a lot of defensive submissions against Renan Miura. Renan Miura would go for a lot of subs, a couple of leg locks, and even a rear naked choke at one point. But I do have Marina in this one here. I think she wins by decision. She's a massive favourite, minus 500 on best fight odds right now, actually, so it should be an interesting fight, but I do think Marina wins by decision. The next fight of the night is going to be Evelyn Martins taking on Karolina Sobek. I do have Evelyn Martins in this one here. Before I did the research, I was just looking at the Tapology profiles, I really did expect to be picking Karolina Sobek in this matchup, but I'm not going to be. Karolina Sobek has probably fought arguably the better level of competition. She beat a girl that was 6-0, Marisa Locke, but Marisa Locke was 38 years old and a pure striker. And then apart from that, she did fight Martina Jindrova, who is going to be in the PFL, and she is also on this card as well and has some great wins herself, but I'll talk about her later. And before that, she didn't fight the best level of competition, but she does have a bare knuckle MMA fight, and she's got a pretty good amateur record as well of 8-4. Evelyn Martins has no amateur record in MMA to my knowledge, but she is 4-0 in pro MMA, and she's looked really good in her last few fights. She did win twice in PFL in the Challenger Series. She beat Michal and then Jackie Catalin. She won that fight against Catalin. It was a war. She was actually dropped in the first round and then kind of come back. She got really good leg kicks, Evelyn Martins does. Really good kickboxing. She throws a lot of kicks and she can go for takedowns, and when she does have a lot of success with the takedowns, but so does Karolina Sobek. Karolina Sobek, I expected to see this girl going for takedowns somewhat often, because almost all of her wins are by submission. And to my surprise, when she was fighting against Marisa Locke, she didn't really go for any takedowns whatsoever until the end of the first round and then the start of the first, when Marisa Locke kind of initiated the clinch. When Karolina Sobek does strike, it is with the boxing, which I think is probably going to leave Evelyn Martins pretty open to landing leg kicks against her, because Karolina Sobek, when she's striking, she's standing straight up, and I think Evelyn Martins is going to have a lot of opportunities to use her kickboxing against her. Karolina Sobek as well, she is an expert in a very particular position. I believe it's called the scarf hold, where you take someone down and then you've got control, kind of inside control, but very high up on them. She's got a lot of finishes by that. She won by neck crank from that position. The scarf hold arm lock, the modified Americana, which is kind of similar to the scarf hold arm lock, I guess you could say, well, from the way that she completed it. So she's an expert in that position, and that's how she gets her takedown. She trips you, and she ends up in that position based off of the trip. I think Evelyn Martins has shown good takedown defense. She's a good striker. She's actually well-rounded herself. I've got Martins to win this fight. I don't know what the odds are because it is short notice. I believe maybe Sobek was probably someone that was going to fill in for whoever pulled out. So I think she was an alternate in the show because actually Evelyn Martins was meant to fight Amanda Leve. And Amanda Leve was a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. So she would have been preparing for the grappling. I might actually be wrong. I think Karolina Sobek was, meant to fight Amanda Leve. And Leve withdrew and now Martins is in. I apologize for that mistake there. But it doesn't change my pick. I do have Evelyn Martins by decision. I think she should be able to win on the feet. She'll chop at the legs a bit. She actually dropped her opponent twice, Jackie Cataline, with the leg kicks. I think you could see something like that again. As long as she doesn't initiate in the clinch, she should be pretty safe. So I do have her to win this matchup. So we move on to the men's heavyweights. You've got Michal Andryszak taking on Patrick Brady. And in this matchup, I do have Michal Andryszak. He's much more experienced and he does have the much higher level of competition. But I will talk about the fight, obviously. Patrick Brady, he is an older dude. He's 39 years old, but he hasn't been in MMA for too long. He made his amateur debut in 2018. And he's fought 5 times in professional MMA in the last year and 3 months. He's been hustling, dude. And to be fair, he hasn't been fighting the best opponents in the world, but he has been dominating them all except for his most recent fight against Yilmaz Wildman there, where he was somewhat competitive. A lot of the fight did take place on the feet, which is where I would say Brady does struggle with. For the most part, what he's able to do is just dominate his opponents with his wrestling, take them down up against the cage, take them down and then work for a submission or even land some ground and pound as well. He has been dominating his opponents by doing that, but it has been a pretty low level of competition, to be fair, especially against Michal Andryszak. He has been fighting a lot of guys with losing records. He is dominating these guys, as I did say, but they're not the best level of competition. When you look at Michal Andryszak and you look at his career, Michal Andryszak, his last loss was actually the only time he has ever seen the scorecards in his 35-fight long career was against former UFC fighter Darko Stosic, who actually fought Jamal Hill at one point as well. And he was taking down Darko Stosic in that fight as well. And also, Michal Andryszak is a very powerful striker. A lot of recent wins by KO in the first round. He KO'd Ider de Souza in 35 seconds. He submitted this guy within a minute and a half, but he was a 1-0 at the time. Short notice opponent. He KO'd Evgeny Golub in 54 seconds. Very late finish by the ref as well, by the way, because he took him down, was very patient to go to the ground, and then the ref just let him ground and pound away. It was a late stoppage, to be fair. He's fought some good guys too. Fought Phil DeFries, who's on a massive run right now, and had an up and down career in KSW. But what we're looking at here is experience, and experience against really good levels of competition, like 17-8, 12-2, 21-12, 10-5. This is experience here, and that's what Patrick Brady doesn't have. And that's what Michal Andryszak does have. And another thing that Michal Andryszak does have is size. This guy is massive. He's 6'5", but he's very well built at 6'5" for heavyweight. He's huge. He throws head kicks. As I said, he did get the KO recently over Evgeny Golub by head kick. And he's powerful on the feet as well. And he's also got wrestling in the back pocket if he needs to use it. He can go for takedowns himself. Patrick Brady will be looking to initiate takedowns against Michal Andryszak. But I do believe Andryszak will be able to keep the fight on the feet. And I think he's going to get a KO. I think he's got like 18 KOs in his career. 6 submissions. 1 win by disqualification. He's never seen the scorecards except for once. I think he's going to finish Patrick Brady. I think he's going to finish Patrick Brady by KO. But I respect Patrick Brady's hustle like a lot. You know, he's fought 5 pro fights in just over a year, and that's pretty cool, honestly. But I do think it's Michal Andryszak who's going to get it done. And Michal Andryszak, if he looks really good in this fight and his next one, he could be one of the favourites to win the whole thing. The next one is going to be Marcelo Nunes taking on Maurice Greene. I do have Marcelo Nunes in this one here. Maurice Greene, he's a decent striker. He's very tall. He's 6'7" with an 82-inch reach. But what he struggles with is opponents that will take him down and control him for a very long period of time, or opponents that will clinch against him. Maurice Greene, in almost every single UFC loss, he was taken down and controlled for a very considerable amount of time. His fight against Greg Hardy, he was controlled by Greg Hardy for 2.5 minutes. And that fight only lasted 6 minutes. So for half of it, pretty much, he was controlled by Greg Hardy. Olena controlled him for a very decent amount of time. That fight never made it to control because Pavlovich just KO'd him in the first. Marcos Rogério de Lima controlled him for 14 minutes in a 15-minute fight. You know, and it's just kind of like, man, like, if you were going to wrestle against Maurice Greene and go to take him down, you're probably going to win because he doesn't really have the best get-up game. And someone like Marcelo Nunes is really going to test that, and I will talk about him very soon. But another thing that could be a little bit of an X-factor in this fight, though, is Jon Jones very well could be in Maurice Greene's corner, because Jon Jones was in the corner of Sam Kay's last opponent. Unfortunately, I forgot his name, which is really embarrassing, but I believe Maurice Greene is a very close training partner of Jon Jones. We've seen Jon Jones in the corner of his teammates before. I wouldn't be too surprised if we see him here again, but what Marcelo Nunes does, to start talking about him, he's a very good grappler, and he kind of is an expert in the arm triangle choke. There is actually a very interesting fight that I did watch that kind of got me interested to maybe in the future of Marcelo Nunes fights. Probably not this one. Marcelo Nunes was taken down, I believe, 3 times by Vivon Lewis and controlled on top. And Vivon Lewis was landing very heavy ground and pound. And he controlled Nunes for pretty much the whole of the first round, landing ground and pound. And then he took him down again in the second round. So what can happen is you can actually take Marcelo Nunes down and have success. But if Marcelo Nunes is on top of you, he's going for that arm triangle choke. It's kind of all he goes for. Marcelo Nunes got a reversal on Vivon Lewis in the second round. And within seconds, he was working for an arm triangle choke. He didn't get it. And then he kind of readjusted. And then he went for it again in the second round again. And he got it there. When he took down Dylan Potter, he instantly latched up the arm triangle choke sort of thing, and he got it in. He's got 3 wins in a row by arm triangle choke. Believe it or not, I'm going to pick him to win by arm triangle choke as well. I think Marcelo Nunes will take down Maurice Greene, and I think he will get Maurice Greene to the ground. And when he does, I think he's probably going to be working for the arm triangle. So I've got him to win by arm triangle choke. Probably in the first or the second round. He loves to win in the first round, but Greene might be able to tough it out for 1 round. But I've got Nunes in this one. I've got Andryszak in this one here. We go to the odds. Michal Andryszak is minus 350, and Marcelo Nunes is minus 275. So 2 pretty big favourites in PFL there, but I do think they both get it done. Now we move up the card. We've got Martina Jindrova taking on Amber Leibrock, and I do have Martina Jindrova in this one here. She's got a very extensive kickboxing and Muay Thai career. She was an Austrian K1 kickboxing champion with over 60 professional fights in kickboxing, and she has been fighting at 155 in the past. Now PFL has gotten rid of 155, probably because Kayla Harrison isn't returning this year to my knowledge anyway. So now they've gone to 145, and Martina Jindrova will then be now fighting at 145 against Amber Leibrock, who is listed at 6 foot. I'm not entirely sure if she is 6 foot though, because she did last fight an opponent called Morgan Fryer, who was 5'8", and she wasn't too much taller than her. What I thought so anyway. And in that fight as well against Morgan Fryer was desperately trying to take her down. She shot for a takedown attempt and kind of clinched up against the cage. Kind of almost got it, but Leibrock had really good takedown defense. And then 2 minutes into the fight, Morgan Fryer was breathing heavy. Her hands were by her hips, and then she was just shooting naked takedowns kind of out of nowhere, throwing only overhand rights. And Amber Leibrock looked really good in that fight, kind of because Morgan Fryer gassed out and didn't really have too much for her on the feet. Amber Leibrock throws a lot of leg kicks. She's got very long legs, and she does throw a lot of kicks. She does have pretty good kickboxing herself. I would say that's probably her strong suit. Martina Jindrova, as I said, 60 kickboxing fights, in my opinion, is probably going to be the better kickboxer. And a mostly kickboxing fight especially, has fought better competition as well. Her 3-fight win streak was over a 2-0 opponent in PFL. 11-8 Vanessa Mello, former UFC fighter, and Zamzagul Faizalova, who was experienced at 7-2, and she beat her by finish. Amber Leibrock, she hasn't fought the best girls, and she lost to Amanda Bell and Jessica Borger and Bellator, then she bounced back in Invicta FC against Morgan Fryer and a couple of other opponents. I like Martina Jindrova. I like her background in kickboxing. She's the favourite, minus 200 against Amber Leibrock, who is listed at 6 foot. I'm interested to see how tall she is compared to Jindrova, but I do think Jindrova should get it done here. And yeah, probably by decision as well, is what most people are picking as well. We now move up to Biaggio Ali Walsh taking on Isaiah Figueroa. It's one of those fights where it's an amateur fight with a lot of amateur fighters. There's not a lot of information on them. But Biaggio Ali Walsh is Muhammad Ali's grandson, and obviously he's trying to make a name for himself in MMA. But it's kind of one of those situations where Biaggio Ali Walsh, if he wants to have a career, he's kind of got the name, he's got the family. He can't really do it without a lot of eyes on him, and PFL are really trying to capitalize on that. They signed him as a 1-1 amateur MMA fighter. He won his last fight against Tom Gracer, who had almost no information on him whatsoever. I did pick him to win that fight, though, by KO. Isaiah Figueroa, 1-1. I mean, I just don't really know much about him, to be honest. But what I do know about Biaggio Ali Walsh is he's a very good striker. I believe he's training MMA somewhat full-time as well. Like, he's taking his career very seriously, and I do think he is going to be able to get it done by finish as well. But if you really wanted to bet this fight, you're betting on an amateur fight to start with, and then a fight which there's not a lot of information of either guy, really, and I think Biaggio Ali Walsh will win, but I would just recommend kind of staying away from putting him in parlays. It is an amateur fight. We don't really know how good Biaggio is yet. The guy that he beat was Tom Gracer, 1-3 in amateur fights, and we just don't really know. So it'll be interesting to see. I'm looking forward to it. I'm a big fan of the idea of Muhammad Ali's grandson being in MMA, but hopefully they don't push him too hard. I don't want to see him go pro too soon. I want him to kind of build up into it, because he is going to have a very high profile career, which could be a good thing or a bad thing. The good thing is he's going to get big opportunities like the PFL contract already, but the bad thing is he can't do it like kind of under the radar, build up a big record, and then move on to a pro. So hopefully Biaggio, we see good things for him in the future. I'm looking forward to seeing his career. I think he gets it done over Figueroa. And now we move up to Olena Kolesnyk taking on Aspen Ladd, and I am picking Aspen Ladd by finish. Actually, I do think Aspen Ladd will be able to finish Olena Kolesnyk using her wrestling, grappling, and ground and pound here. Olena Kolesnyk, she hasn't had the best run in PFL, but she did go on a 2-fight winning streak over Abby Montez, who was up and coming, and Vanessa Mallow, who was a little bit undersized and also a former UFC fighter as well. And then she lost to Larissa Pacheco by KO, and it was a pretty bad KO as well. Like, it was actually KO on the feet. And Aspen Ladd, Aspen Ladd had that run in the UFC, somewhat legendary in a way. She's very well known for pulling out of fights and missing weight, but I don't think she's going to have that problem fighting at 145 pounds in the PFL. But if you do go way back in Aspen Ladd's career, she actually has fought a pretty decent level of competition. Although they weren't in the UFC at the time, she beat Sajara Eubanks, who ended up in the UFC. She beat Amanda Cooper, who ended up in the UFC as well. And she beat almost all of these girls by finish. A lot of first round and second round finishes by submission, all ground and pound. And she also won her debut by ground and pound. And then she beat Tonya Evinger by ground and pound. So Aspen Ladd, she is a finisher. She hasn't got a finish recently, against Julia Budd, but she did KO Yana Santos, then she lost a couple fights in a row. Kind of went on that run of missing weight, pulling out of fights and stuff, but now she's in PFL, upper weight class. I think she should be okay making the weight. And Olena Kolesnyk, she's a striker for the most part. I do think Aspen Ladd will be able to take her down, but really at the end of the day, it's a big step down in competition for Aspen Ladd. Aspen Ladd, when we look at her last 5 fights, it's against Jermaine Durandamy, former champion of the UFC. Yana Santos, ranked fighter in the UFC, I believe currently top 15, maybe top 10. Norma Dumont, top 5 women's featherweight, I believe. Raquel Pennington knocking on the door of a title shot right now at women's 135. And then Julia Budd, former Bellator fighter, long-time Bellator champion as well, I believe, at one point in her career. But I think she beats Olena Kolesnyk by finish. I actually do have Ladd to finish the fight. Probably second or third round TKO, and it should be a good look for Aspen Ladd. I think she will be able to take down Olena and have success with her grappling. And this fight is interesting. We've got Renan Ferreira taking on Rizvan Kuniev, and I'm very, very interested in watching this fight because Renan Ferreira, he was all the talk at one point, and then now he's not the talk really. He's unfortunately just not really had the best run as of very, very recently. But at one point, this man was on a mission. You know what I mean? He fought for Verdum, and Verdum's big return after a bit of time off, and he had a sub. Verdum had a sub over Renan Ferreira, and then Renan Ferreira tapped, but the ref didn't see it, and then Verdum ended up getting finished by Renan Ferreira's ground and pound that was overturned, obviously, as you can see. And then he fought Karolina Sobek, and Karolina Sobek is a tough dude, man, and he couldn't finish him, but he still dominated him. He just couldn't quite finish him. And then he fought Stuart Austin, who I believe all but won losses by KO. The Jamal Jones win is pretty good, especially in 25 seconds. And then he lost recently in 2022 to Clayton Abreu, but it was overturned because Abreu was on something USADA wouldn't approve of, you know what I mean? And then he lost to Ante Delija as well. So Renan Ferreira's stock right now is pretty low, and to be honest, my feelings about Renan Ferreira are somewhat low as well, which is why I'm picking Rizvan Kuniev. But if Renan Ferreira wasn't on a 2-fight losing streak, I would be really tempted to pick him. He's 6'8" with an 85-inch reach. He's a great grappler, and he's got power in the hands, and he's a strong striker, very heavy in the hands when it comes to pure Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as well. He's got great grappling, and Rizvan Kuniev, he kind of does fight like you would expect him to fight. He's a wrestler, he's got that ground and pound style, and he has fought at Eagle FC as well. He's kind of fought all around the world. Actually fought on Dana White's Contender Series as well. And in hindsight, maybe UFC should have picked him up, because UFC does need heavyweights. Rizvan Kuniev probably would have fit in pretty well there. He then fought Anthony Hamilton, former UFC fighter, albeit pretty old. I believe he's over 40 years old in that fight. And he subbed him very quickly. It's a tough one to call. It's a really tough one to call, honestly, because I can see Renan Ferreira winning this fight, either by KO and then maybe even throwing up a submission, because it's not like Renan Ferreira isn't familiar with getting subs. I don't think he got one sub in his career, but he was going for a lot of subs over Karolina Sobek. But Sobek is a tough dude to finish, you know what I mean? But yeah, I think we're going to go with Rizvan Kuniev here. I think he's going to wrestle Ferreira. I think he's going to stay safe on top. He's going to throw ground and pound as well. On the feet, it's going to be dangerous for both guys, but I would say Ferreira probably is the more dangerous striker with that massive reach advantage. He's massive. He's 6'8". You know what I mean? He's a big boy. Like 6'8" compared to me is very tall as well. I had a friend in high school who was 6'10", if you can believe it or not, and he was very, very tall. But Kuniev by finish is my pick. I think he's going to win by KO, and I'm going to go late. I think it's going to be like a late third round TKO. I think this guy's going to brawl for the first 2 rounds. I think maybe Ferreira could be getting the better of it, but I think Kuniev will get a takedown late in the fight, 3rd round, and work something there with some ground and pound. So I've got him to win by ground and pound 3rd round TKO over Renan Ferreira. He's a slight favourite, -210. Aspenlad is -400 against Olena Kolesnyk. You can kind of understand the line for Olena being the Aspenlad fight being very wide. Massive step down for Aspenlad. These fights, odds here are somewhat close as well. Renan Ferreira is going to be dangerous though. I really do want to emphasise that, but I do have Kuniev in the matchup. And now we move on to some of the final fights of the card. We've got Denis Goltsov taking on Yorgan De Castro, and I'm picking Goltsov, but I think De Castro's got a good chance of winning the fight. If De Castro wins the fight, it will be by knockout. Goltsov has been KO'd 3 times before in his career, somewhat recently as well against Ante Delija. That was not a KO. Ignore what I just said, but Goltsov's been KO'd before. He is somewhat hittable when the fight's on the feet, but if Goltsov is going to have the fight his way, the fight won't be on the feet. He's going to take you down and control you for a very significant amount of time, like he did against Maurice Greene. And John Jones was in Maurice Greene's corner for that fight, I'm pretty sure. But Yorgan De Castro, you know, he had a bad UFC run. He KO'd Justin Tafa within half a round, though, which is a pretty big highlight to have on your reel. But since then, he did lose to a couple of times Carlos Felipe, Yajish Danho as well. It was a pretty bad loss. Then he bounced back, submitted Sean Asher at Eagle FC, and then he beat Junior Dos Santos, but Dos Santos was on his way to winning that fight and unfortunately got injured. It was kind of a weird moment, but I've got Goltsov here. I think what Goltsov is going to do to win the fight is just take down Yorgan De Castro early, and then control him for 3 rounds. That is how he's going to beat Yorgan De Castro. I don't see Yorgan De Castro winning by using any of his wrestling. I think he's got to win by KO, and I don't think he gets that done because I think Goltsov is actually going to wrestle early and control the rounds and win by decision. A lot of people have him by KO. He wasn't able to finish Maurice Greene. He did finish this 8-5 opponent, but you know, like I would be surprised if he could find a finish over De Castro. I think what he does, he just takes him down and controls him for 3 rounds. Wins a pretty safe decision, so he doesn't get injured or hurt too much. So we can now progress later on in the season. You know what I'm trying to say. And the odds here as well, if we do go to the odds, Goltsov is minus 300, which is somewhat wide, but I can kind of understand where they're coming from. And now we move on. I've picked all favourites so far, and I do apologise, but it's another favourite pick. Bruno Capelloza, in his last fight, actually fought Matthias Scheffel, and he lost. And I could not believe it when I was seeing it. I genuinely did not understand how Bruno Capelloza lost to Matthias Scheffel. Matthias Scheffel did win the fight, but I just couldn't believe it, honestly, because I was so confident in Bruno Capelloza, and he let me down so much, because he's actually a former $1 million prize winner. Every single one of Bruno Capelloza's wins, except for one, when he did win the $1 million prize against Ante Delija, is by KO. And Matthias Scheffel has been KO'd so many times in his career. He's been KO'd 7 times. And kind of based off that, I truly believed that Bruno Capelloza would be able to KO Matthias Scheffel, and he couldn't get it done. I'm picking Bruno Capelloza again to KO Matthias Scheffel. It is worth noting, though, I believe both of these guys are former light heavyweights as well. But man, like, Bruno Capelloza KO'd Ante Delija in 46 seconds. And then he KO'd Maurice, former Bellator fighter. And then he KO'd Jamal Jones. And it's just, he couldn't KO Matthias Scheffel. And it just amazed me. But, of course, Matthias Scheffel got KO'd by Ante Delija. That was a very confident pick when I did make that one 3 months ago. And then we're going to say it again. Matthias Scheffel got KO'd 3 months ago. And now he's already back in fight camp. You know, it's not like he's going to have to cut weight. But he's been KO'd twice in 9 months. That's not too good for the brain. That's probably not too good for the durability either. I've got Bruno Capelloza here. He's a very strong, powerful striker. I mean, he's got 14 KO wins, a lot of them in the first round. Scheffel's been KO'd a lot before, but man, I would be really disappointed if Capelloza made me look like an idiot again, because I really hope he doesn't. But I've got Bruno Capelloza to win again. Scheffel won the first fight, but Capelloza really should KO him, and if he doesn't, as I said before, I would genuinely be quite disappointed. We move up the card, Larissa Pacheco taking on Julia Budd, and I do have Larissa Pacheco on this one here. Julia Budd is still a very good fighter, took a very competitive fight against Aspen Ladd, lost to Gina Fabian, but that was a weird fight. Like, Gina Fabian's huge, and she missed weight at 155 pounds. It was very interesting, but Gina Fabian managed to win that fight. I think it was a very competitive fight as well when it happened, but it was just kind of a weird fight. But Larissa Pacheco, she beat Kayla Harrison recently, and yeah, she really turned it around because she had lost to Kayla Harrison twice in the past, actually, both by decision. And I think when she beat Kayla Harrison, she showed incredible grappling. She showed great striking. She's very well known for being a very good striker, very powerful striker. She's got KOs, a lot of KOs. She's a former UFC fighter as well. She didn't have the best UFC run, but she was very young at the time. It was in 2014 when she was, she must have been like 19 years old when she fought Jessica Andrade. She was 20 and a half years old. So it was a long time ago, way back when, and then she fought Macy Chiasson as well. But now she's gone on a crazy run. A lot of KOs in her career. You know, she KO'd Olena Kolesnyk, Gina Fabian, she KO'd her. She KO'd Zamzagul, Olena Kolesnyk again, she KO'd her twice. I've got Larissa Pacheco here. I don't know if she can finish Julia Budd, though. Like, I know Julia Budd got finished within half a round by Chris Cyborg. But, well, I'm really wrong about that. I must have misremembered a different Chris Cyborg fight. But before that, she was having a pretty dominant career in Bellator. But I do have Larissa Pacheco in this matchup. I actually think Pacheco, if she really wanted to, she probably could initiate some grappling because she would have just had a training camp where she would have been training grappling really, like, specifically for Kayla Harrison. So her grappling has probably vastly improved since she did fight Kayla Harrison last. So I wouldn't be too surprised if she could kind of use some grappling against Julia Budd. But Julia Budd, she's on a 2-fight losing streak. She's almost 40 years old at this point as well. She lost to Jenna Fabian, who's just a pure striker. Marissa Pacheco could probably keep it on the feet, land some good shots. She could probably grapple with Julia Budd if she wanted to as well. I've got Pacheco. I don't know if she gets the KO though. I know Pacheco is well known for getting really good KOs, but Bud's tough. You know, I would be surprised if Bud gets KO'd by Pacheco here. So I am going with Marissa Pacheco by decision, and she is a massive favourite. She's the former champion. She just beat Kayla Harrison in a huge fight. I think she's going to get it done over Julia Budd. So hopefully you guys enjoyed those predictions. Yeah, I enjoyed actually going back and watching a lot of these fights. A lot of the heavyweight fights were pretty fun. Even Marcelo Nunes, who's a pure grappler, was pretty fun to watch. Michal Andryszak is very fun to watch. I had a lot of fun watching his fights, and I think he's going to be very good in the PFL. But let me know what you think in the comments, and as always, we do have the We Want Picks premium membership, which is just there. And also at the end of the video, I do like to shout out my own personal channel, because I do have my own channel. It's called Artem MMA, so I would appreciate if you checked that out as well. I make my own content there, but I do make the PFL, Bellator, Dana White's Contender Series content for We Want Picks, and I will be adding some of my own contents to the We Want Picks premium membership as well. So that's something to look forward to within, honestly, the next couple of weeks. They're working very hard to improve that premium membership, so now's a pretty good time to get into it. And if you want a 3-day trial, you can use my code so you can see what's there. And I'll see you in the next one. Thank you guys for watching.